I was in my late 20s when my father went home to be with the Lord. And I remember the funeral, and it was it was packed out. People were standing outside of the funeral. And so my mother and I played the piano, my mother played the organ, we played for the first part of the service. And then when we finished playing, it was time to close the casket. My brother, my mother, and I went up, and we actually had an opportunity to close the casket. But what I remember thinking in that moment was, Dad, now you're done. It's my turn. Let's see what I can do. And so I was just blessed that I was raised like that, that there are transitions in life. And sometimes they happen pretty fast. Sometimes they're unexpected. The old song says, time is filled with swift transitions. And it is true that the nature of time is that there are transitions in it. That is what time is. Time, God established it, and then God will finish it, and we will be in eternity. So was there eternity past? Then we have time, and we're going to have time at the end, and we're going to have eternity future. So time is what we live in, and time is a marker, so to speak, for results. Time is a marker for transitions. Time is filled with transitions. Change is a part of what time is until there is no more time, and then there will be a consistency. But until there is no more thing, because as time, since God created time, there are going to be changes. And sometimes those changes are joyous, right? Because we're now in a new year and we're anticipating all that God is going to do, and we're happy and we're just celebrated on New Year's Eve, and we went to church and we praised the Lord and we had a great time in anticipation for what God is going to do. But there are also times when you are leaving something behind, when you are recognizing that God has closed a door and now it's time to go through another door. And let me tell you something, and let's be honest. Sometimes when we're looking at what happened in the past, it is hard to let go if that was a good thing. So, and sometimes if it wasn't, right? So when we look, we're traveling through time together. But there were years when we were just so excited about the new year. But I'm not seeing as much excitement about the new year this year as in years past, because we are entering a period of uncertainty. It's an uncertain period domestically. If you're in the United States, if you're in Israel, it's uncertain. If you're in the Gaza Strip, it's uncertain. If you are in Africa, it's uncertain. If you are in Russia, it's uncertain. If you are in Ukraine, it's uncertain. And sometimes we just say, can I just hold on to a little bit of what was? Because what was last year was precious. What was last year was valuable. And if I just turn my complete attention toward a new year, I'm going to be leaving something that I value. I'm going to be leaving someone that I value in my last year. In my last year, I may have lost someone, and I didn't want, in my last year, there was war. In my last year, there was rumors of war. In my last year, there were murders in the street. In my last year, there were mass murders. In my last year, someone left me that I didn't want to leave me. In my last year, I had a breakup. In my last year, I didn't know how I was going to make it through to the end of the year because I was in so much pain. And I feel like I'm somehow betraying that person. I'm somehow betraying my past if I move forward. And the truth is, there's some things I'm still holding on to that God has said let go of. It seems like I feel like I can't let go. I feel like I can't do it. I just can't do it. I don't have the strength. I don't have the ability to let go. So I want to talk to us out of our own time, referencing the book of Joshua. Joshua beginning in chapter 1. The title of this message will be Focused Forward. Change your mind. Focus forward, change your mind. Now, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead now. Therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all these people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. There shall not any man be able to stand before thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land, which I swore unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whithersoever thou goest. So last time we were talking about Moses, and we were talking about the time in the book of Numbers where he hit the rock twice. And the Lord said, you're not going into the land because you hit the rock twice. And I told you to just speak to the rock. I just wanted you to speak to the rock, and you didn't want to just obey me because you were mad, because you have an anger issue, Moses, and you've had an anger issue for a long time. Since you were a young man, you had an anger issue, and we've been working through that. But because you misrepresented me, then I cannot let you go into the land with the children of Israel. You're going to die before you get there. But I talked about maybe this being grace, because if you looked at the first part of that chapter, you see Miriam had died. You see so many people that had died, and these were Moses' people. And when people die and they're your people, you know, you might have issues, but when they leave, it is painful. And Miriam had just died at the beginning of that chapter. And then he was upset with the people because they were grumbling against him and they were mad at him, and he was like, God, basically I'm sick of these people. He was not happy with the people. And I can't blame him, because he had done so much for them and they didn't appreciate it. But on the other hand, they had slave mentality. They had just come out of slavery. They couldn't see long term. Slave mentality gives you the propensity to just be able to see right in front of you, can't see long term. And so God was taking them somewhere, but since they hadn't gotten there yet, they were complaining because they hadn't gotten there yet, because their mind needed changing, because they couldn't think long term. They couldn't strategically walk through a difficult situation to get to a better situation. And so when you can't think through something, you can't see the end of something, you tend to start complaining. When you don't see how it's ever going to work out, and you're stressed out, and you're frustrated, and you're hurt, and you're angry. Frequently, as humans, we look for somebody to blame, don't we? Yeah. And so that's what the children of Israel did. They were upset because they couldn't see the result, and so they started looking for somebody to blame, and who else to blame but their leader, Moses. And so they did that, and Moses was talking to God about it. God was upset about it. Moses was upset about it. But Moses was seriously dealing with his anger issues. It's amazing how God can choose people who have what issues. That's how he chose me. That's how he chose you, because he can decide to use someone who has issues. And Moses had an issue. He had a temper. And his temper burned hot, and more than one time when his temper burned hot, he would murder somebody, murder the Egyptians, came down off the mountain, got mad at the people. He was so angry that he broke the commandments that God wrote with his own hand. Can you imagine? God wrote something. He's like, I'm so mad. I'm furious. And then he killed all those people. He had a temper, had issues. God used him. And so we're walking through that, or we walked through that with Moses, and we saw that ultimately Moses did not go into the promised land, but he was already sick of, tired of people complaining, and said, God, why are you giving me these people? At first when he got them, he was excited. By the time he hit the rock twice, he wasn't so excited, he was sick of them. And then he hit the rock twice and they called them rebels. He was mad. God said, you misrepresented me. Because leaders don't get to do that, do we? We don't get to just take out our anger on folk. And my cousin is a mentor and a bishop, and she's been a bishop for a long time. And she shared with me, I was one time riding in the car with her, and she just drops these little gems, and she said, Karia, a minister doesn't demonstrate their anger. And I don't have a propensity for anger anyway, but she went ahead and told me about this incident at a nail salon where they just really acted foolish. And she said, I just politely corrected their perception and I left. And she said, because a minister doesn't do that. And a leader can't afford to make certain mistakes. There's some mistakes that you can make, but other mistakes you just really can't afford to make. As a leader of a church, as a pastor, but as a leader of an organization, as a leader of a department, as a leader of your home, there are some mistakes that you need to work hard not to make. Moses made one of those mistakes, and the Lord said, you're not going to take them in. And when he got up close, he said, oh, come up to the mountain. You're going to die on the mountain. But he let Moses see all of it. And then Moses died. Then he was buried. And then we enter this book, chapter 1 of Joshua. And really what struck me about chapter 1 of Joshua when I looked at it, says now after the death of Moses, and Moses had died, Moses, amazing. Oh my goodness, he was amazing. Like all that Moses did, all that he did. Now, all of a sudden he's gone. And the people are there, and the mission is still there. But Moses is gone. What do you do when you lose the person that you thought was going to lead you into your promised land? What do you do when you had a mentor and you thought that mentor was going to be everything and everybody that God would use to lead you in that promised land, and somehow the mentor is gone? What do you do when you have a president of a company, or when you have a department head, or what do you do when you have a situation when you expect something to happen and it doesn't happen? When you have a husband and somehow your husband is not there this year and he was there last year, and you expected him to be the one to lead you into your promised land, to lead you into the place of joy, to lead you in the place of security, and he is no longer there. Or he has decided that's not what he has as a vision for his life. And you said, but Lord, it was so good for so long, and what happened? Did I do something? What happened? And it's difficult to accept it sometimes when God says, okay, that door is closed. I'm closing the door. That's over. And what I want you to do is to turn your attention toward what is going to be. And I need for you to open your hand and release what was. And that is the situation that I see Joshua in right now. Because he had been, it says Moses' minister, but it was Moses' mentee, right? We first see him showing up in the book of Exodus, chapter 17. And you see Joshua showing up, and it's the first time he's shown up. And what's going on is there's going to be a fight with the Amalekites, and Moses says, okay, now there's going to be a fight with the Amalekites, and Joshua, what I need for you to do is I need for you to take the children of Israel, and you're going to engage in battle, and I'm going to go up here to this mountain, and when my hand is up, then you're going to prosper, but if my hand falls, you're not going to prosper. It's such a beautiful picture, hand up, hand down, and it's really a beautiful picture of the unity, I think, of prayer, the unity of standing before God and acting. Like there's no dichotomy between that. You stand before God and you pray, but according to James, faith without works is dead. So Moses would go up to the mountain, and so his part was to stand before God and to be the vehicle through whom God blessed the people by keeping his arm up. But Joshua's problem was not the presence of God. The presence of God was going to be with him because Moses was taking care of the presence of God. But Joshua had the problem of fighting these Amalekites, these mighty warriors. And guess what? They won. Yes, Joshua was successful, but he was appointed because he could fight. You see where I'm going? Joshua comes onto the scene in Exodus chapter 17, first time in the Bible, as a warrior. He's coming onto the scene as a fighter. So he has in him what it's going to take to do what God has called him to do. I'm telling you somebody right now, you have in you to do what it takes for what God is calling you to. I'm not saying it's not going to be battles. I'm not going to say it's not going to be fights. I'm not going to say it's not going to be hard. Oh, there will be times when it feels like it's impossible. And there will be times when it's all faith and very little you, but you were born for this. You were created for this. You were made for this. You are God's Joshua in whatever sphere, whatever area God has called you. You were made for this. There has to be, for you to complete, Bedside Baptists won't get it, y'all. There has to be, for you to complete what God has called you to, this presence that you have before the Lord. You need the Lord's blessing on it. Do you say, Kari, he's never going to bless me if I sin? No, I'm not saying that because, he's going to bless sinners and he's going to bless folks that don't sin. But what I will say is that you want to operate under the banner of blessing, then you need to operate under the banner of prayer. You got to operate under the banner of God's will, God's word. Let me tell you, I was talking to my daughter yesterday, as a matter of fact, and she is ordained and she is a minister, and the Lord allows her to work at a church, and she is awesome at what she does, and I just admire her work, and I'm very God proud of what He has done in her life. But we were talking, and she was saying, if I weren't doing this, I wouldn't know what to do. I said, I wouldn't have a career. This is all I know to do. And she was talking about ministry, and I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, I was raised to do this. She said, I remember going to seminary with you up on DTS campus, and we would be in the room doing homework while you were in class. And she said, I was raised to do this. And I remember sitting in homiletics class with you. If I was out for school, I was in class with you, and I heard what the professors were saying, and I was raised to do this. She started working in churches when she was 15, and she was coordinating services, and it'd be Christmas, and the youth had to do this, and the children, and the pastor would need to go around to different, and she was the one that was coordinating all that by the time she was 15, because she says she was raised to do this. And then when I began to lead a women's Bible study, the Lord blessed me to do that at a church here in Dallas, that just a wonderful, wonderful fellowship. And she was in her 20s, and she would come to Bible study with me, and she would follow me around, and everywhere I went, she went, and she was learning, and she was taking notes, and she would be helping, and I would say, her name is Tristan, I would say, Tristan, you're you're grown, you're 20-something years old. It's okay, I can handle it, you can go get a job, you can go do something else. She worked part-time, and she said, no, Mom, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be helping you. And I fought it, and then I let her do it because she insisted that was what she was supposed to be doing. And now, on the phone, a young woman who is ordained, a young woman who teaches at her church, teaches ministers, male and female, how to be ministers, a young woman who puts on productions, who travels and fulfills her calling is on the phone telling me, Mom, there's nothing else I would even know how to do. She said, this might be hard. It might have its tough places, but at least I know I've got God. And I've seen it when people are trying to live their life without God and making decisions without God, and it just gets worse and worse for them. At least I know it's going to get better and better for me. But you know what? That's not just her story, that's your story. If you know Jesus Christ, it's going to get better and better for you. And you may not feel like it. It may not feel good today. You may not want to let go of what you got to let go of for God to turn you around and give you the direction and use you the way that He wants to use you. But you got to let go. And you got to focus forward, because time is what time is. And time is filled with transitions. And if you have turned yourself to face the past, you cannot simultaneously turn yourself to face the future. And so in the first verse here, Moses has been close. They've been close. They've been close. Moses and Joshua. But the Lord steps in verse 2 and He says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Seems cold, but it's not cold if you look at the Mount of Transfiguration, because death is just a transition. Death is your transfiguration, or that person's. They're not gone anywhere. Moses shows up, having been hanging out with Jesus, having this great conversation with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. He ain't gone nowhere. He just changed, because life is filled with changes. And so Jesus had something that He had to do. He needed to chat with the ancestors a little bit. But after He chatted with the ancestors, He turned His face toward His future. And so verse 2 says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all these people, unto the land which I do give them, even to the children of Israel. Now let's look at this. Moses might have failed, and the children might have failed, but there was a promise on the children of Israel's life. And the promise on the children of Israel's life was that God was going to give them a land. So they complained and they acted silly, which, you guys know, as children of God, we complain and act silly sometimes, but that doesn't mean that God abandons us. No, and neither does it mean that He's abandoned what He's decided to do with us. He's just got to take us through some changes so we can learn how to behave when we go somewhere. So funny, some of us have a history, and our families had parties, and they might have, big things. And when I was growing up, my family had a lot of pastors and pastors' wives parties and all this kind of stuff where they come up to the house and, everybody talking. It was just a great time. But when my brother and I came in, we were expected to know how to act. We were coming into a space. We were coming to a place. We were coming to a place where we needed to respect what God was doing. And we couldn't run in there and act up. No, if we came in, we had to come in with a particular amount of decorum. And I want to tell somebody that when you enter that room, when God brings you into your space, when God brings you into that place that He has promised you, then there's a certain way that you need to behave when you walk into that place that God has promised you. You're going to go in there, but when you go into that place that God has promised you, behave in a way that's commensurate with what He has promised you. And so the children of Israel had to grow out of and die out of and all that stuff of their limited thinking. They had to die out of their unwillingness to change their mind. They had to die out of their unwillingness to embrace what's next. They had to die out of their struggle. They had to give all up their struggle and accept that now I'm in a new space, I'm in a new place. And in this new space, in this new place, there's a way that God wants me to be. And he's taken the time, somebody say time to strip all that stuff out of me. He's taken the time to get me together, even though I felt like I was being shredded. He's taken the time to unclothe me of the bad things that I thought the bad things happened. I had the things that I wore, the things that the things that I wore that can't enter into this next space, because this next space that I'm going to enter is going to require faith. This next space that I'm going to enter is going to require a certain amount of commitment to God, and I had to be stripped of all that stuff. And God, it didn't feel good to be stripped of all that I was stripped of. I thought that the things that you took from me, the heritage that my family had for years when they were in slavery, I can't eat all that stuff anymore. My pork chops and ham hocks and all, I can't eat all that. I can't. Why not, God? I liked the leeks and I liked the onions, and now you've changed everything. And what? You were preparing me to enjoy the pomegranates? You were preparing me so when I started seeing the milk and honey, I would appreciate the milk and honey? You had to cleanse me of what was so that I could accept what is. Could it be? It certainly is. So let him do it. What do you mean, Kari, let him do it? Don't fight him. Because we can fight him. But none of us want to die in the wilderness. I don't. And so we see here that he's saying, even though the children of Israel weren't doing what they're supposed to do, I'm still going to give them the land. And I am going to do it through you. He said, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread on, that have I given unto you, as I said unto Moses. So I've already promised it, I've already said it, but there's something you can do. It really does remind me of when Moses was holding up the standard, and and he was the one fighting. But he was fighting under the blessing of God. It's the same thing. It's full circle. He's gone through training. He's ready. He's ready. He's ready. And God says, all right, that Moses is not here to hold up a blessing, but I am holding up a blessing over you. But there is something that you can do. There's something you need to do. There's something that you have to do. And what you have to do is make a decision. You have to make a decision to begin to walk. Because I'm not going to give you anything that you are not willing to walk on. I am not going to give you just as you stand. No, what I'm going to expect is that you start walking, and everywhere you walk, I'm going to bless you. Everywhere you walk, I'm going to give you what you need. Everywhere you walk, I'm going to do what you couldn't imagine that I could do. I am going to give you victory after victory, but I want you to be able to walk. And so I see Joshua here thinking, okay, Moses is there, he's buried back there, I gotta go here. And I want to talk to somebody today whose God is directing forward, and you are dragging Moses' tomb. I want you to let it go, because there's something that's true about God, and that is that his love is everlasting, and that he is enough. Jireh, he is enough.